Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And specifically, I'd like to speak about a film which can be found in this multi-disc Blu-ray set, which is called Three Revolutionary Films by Ousmane Sembène. And this is collectively designated at spine number 1217. And I'd like to today, if it's okay, speak about one film in particular. This is, in terms of these three films, the first film in terms of the chronology. This is a work which is described as being from the year 1971. And the name of the filmmaker is Ousmane Sembène. And the name of the work is, and please, I'm very sorry, but please pardon me for my very poor pronunciation of the language, but I hope you can forgive me. But the name of this work is EMITAï. This is the incredible film, really powerful and a very provocative film and very confrontational film, very challenging work, which is described as being from the year 1971. And this is written and directed by Ousmane Sembène. And we have among its really fascinating and great cast people like Andongo Diabon and Michel Renaudot and Robert Fontaine, Ousmane Camara, Ibu Camara, and others. And this is the work which is EMITAï. And so EMITAï, again, described as being from 1971. This is the first film in this set, three revolutionary films by Ousmane Sembène. This is on a Blu-ray, and this is a feature film. And what a film this is. This is a real powerful work, and it just grabs you immediately because we are introduced to this community, the people, the Diola people. And immediately we understand that the Diola people and the community that we meet, and many of the figures in this community that we'll begin to know over the course of the proceedings of this work, EMITAï, they are confronted with a number of problems, very serious and significant problems. And this is having to do with the French military. And we have we understand too that this is a film that is taking place in the early 1940s. I think the booklet that is to be found with this set, Three Revolutionary Films by Ousmane Sembène, which is what I have here. This booklet in its great essay, which we'll talk a little bit about later in a separate video, but it describes the film as taking place in the year 1942. And this is in wartime, the European War, World War II. And so France is directly engaged in wartime military activities. And so we are immediately confronted with the issue that the French military is indeed forcibly engaged in conscription, forcibly taking the young adult males of the Diola community and essentially forcing them to be soldiers in the French military. And so this means, and we see them, immediately upon the opening of the film, that they are taken by force. These members of the community, these young adult males, taken by force and essentially against their will, forced to, in terms of forcible conscription. And so this is already causing a very serious dilemma and kind of a potential catastrophe in terms of this Diola community. Not only do we have the external force as shown by the military forces here, not only have this external threat, which is threatening to essentially destroy the very fabric of the Diola community, but we also have a kind of standoff, because not only do you have the threat of forced conscription, that is breaking up sort of the community makeup of this group of people that we meet. But also there is the threat of the military forcing the community to give up their stock of rice, food stock, and hand it over essentially to the French forces. And this is where we have a very tense kind of standoff between the people and then the military forces, because the people are resistant. They do not give in easily. They do not yield to these advances. They do not yield to these demands to give over their stock of food, their rice stock, and so they keep it hidden. But this causes escalation upon escalation, because the idea is that the military would abscond with or take the rice in order to feed the forces. And with that, we have many kinds of standoffs that are expressed, because as the community refuses to yield, then they become under threat. And what happens is we see how the threat is escalated against the community, and pressure upon pressure is placed, such as essentially rounding up the women and children of the community and forcing them to withstand the intense heat from the direct sunlight, and essentially subjecting them to a kind of physical torture, which itself is quite, in terms of concept and also in terms of cinematic expression in this film, very disturbing. I mean, we see women and children, and sometimes women holding babies, newborn babies, who are forced to sit idle in the hot sun, and it's visibly quite disturbing, and it's visibly for some very intense and quite physically draining and very dangerous, in fact. And so this causes certain rifts and ruptures, maybe forcing some members of the community, the elder generations, who are essentially not subject to a forced conscription, because, as I say, the younger adult males are, but maybe that leaves the elder generation behind, sort of the elders of the community, some of whom have family who are being subjected to this heat torture. And so will some people succumb to the pressure and give in to the demands of the French military forces, or will there be some attempt to try to essentially increase the efforts of resistance? And we also have instances in this film, EMITAï, where we see moments where the elders are discussing, they're having their own, in a sense, kind of war conference, how to deal with the invaders, how to deal with the occupying forces. And sometimes that has to be, maybe they're trying to come up with maybe a diplomatic solution. Sometimes they're trying to come up with a solution of counterforce. And sometimes they try to deal with deal with this in terms of possible pragmatic means. Also, they try to deal with it in terms of introducing or showing us a sort of social currency. And there are some moments where there is a sort of reliance on trying to get counsel or advice from certain areas of the community, and also writ large. And that has a lot to do with counsel and finding guidance, sort of spiritual guidance, religious guidance from sort of deities. And there are some very famous sequences in here involving deities. And thus, I think one of the ways in which the title of the film, EMITAï, becomes quite significant indeed, sort of in terms of the discussion and the context of Diola community and the deities and spiritual beliefs. So there are therefore many sort of vistas, or many types of approaches by which the community is seen to be planning or discussing or talking about aspects of how to resist, or what are the possibilities of resistance, what are the pragmatic or aspirational or perhaps risky approaches to a kind of possible maybe counter resistance, or counterattack, or perhaps another way to say that, feelings of revolution. But it's very interesting too to see how the revolutionary seeds are already being planted and embedded in, for instance, a lot of the close-ups that we see of the Diola people as they're being subjected to this incredible harm that just escalates and escalates and escalates in intensity. and the ferocity as the film progresses. And it's really quite a ferocious show of force. But we see, again, from the viewpoint of the Diola community, just how they are, maybe some might be hesitant to resist at a given moment in time, but we also get a sense that deep down they are ready to revolt. They are ready to resist. They are ready to withstand. It's just a question of how and to what degree are they willing to, how far they are willing to go, if at all, and what are the circumstances and what are the possible implications going forward. Because the military might of the French forces, as expressed here, will not give in lightly. And so there is already here a type of clash that is being depicted in this quite provocative film from Ousmane Sembène, which is the film EMITAï. And so let me just say that this is, one can say, in terms of the Sembène cinematic spirit, or at least, again, I don't hold myself out at all to be a Sembène expert or Ousmane Sembène film expert, but based on my own engagement with the works of Sembène, one can say that this has the idea of clash, I mean revolution, a clash, collisions, and how that spirit is, how that clash is shown in sort of physical manifestations, actual scenes of action and violence and warfare. I mean, in many ways, this is a film about resistance. It's also a film about war. It's a kind of war film. And it's also a film about having to deal with this type of political and military crisis, and what the solutions will be for the Diola community. What will they come up with? So, but in many ways, those aspects of clash and collision find themselves physically manifested in a lot of the scenes of action in this film, and they are really quite vividly rendered in this. And in terms of cutting, some are dealt with a kind of staccato approach, but other times we see the kind of direct results of some of these acts of violence that again escalate. So there is a viciousness and a kind of tragedy, human tragedy, that is always embedded in how this is expressing it in terms of the physical manifestations of this, these action scenes. And also, there is a way in which, as I say, the idea of revolutionary spirit, it's not just founded in a type of physical manifestation, but it also is grounded in a type of intellectual or emotional kind of gestation. We see not just the results of the Diola uprisings, but we also see how they come about. What is the thought process? What is the sort of emotional trigger, or what are the emotional actions that cause the people to feel a certain way? Because you know that they're feeling a certain way. You can get a sense of in terms of the visage and the face and the eyes, that they are subjected to this terrible force, this unwanted external threat, but they must protect themselves, and they must protect their family and their own. It's a communal thing, a communal-wide thing. It's also a very individual thing. Family units are threatened. The livelihoods of one's loved ones are threatened. Children are threatened in a very direct way. And so that has a very visceral, powerful quality, incredibly provocative quality. And so you can get a sense as a viewer to see the gestation of this kind of revolutionary spirit, or the will to resist, which is, I think, a very powerful one. But again, as Sembène does not flinch, and he doesn't lose sight of the fact that these do have certain consequences that are carried through. It's not just the revolutionary spirit, but how far one is willing to go, and what are the implications of that willingness to go as far as one is willing to go. And sometimes those implications can be quite abrupt and quite tragic and quite significant and severe indeed. But these are all the sort of stakes that are at play in work like EMITAIM. And also this idea in terms of a sort of integrity of culture, we have, which is, I think, very much part of a lot of the works by Sembène, not least of which being the films that are included in other films in the set, such as EMITAIM, but kind of the external threat, which can be a kind of stand-in for colonialization and the real ways in which colonialization or movements of colonialization can be said to be really threatening the very fabric of the communities that are subject to their control. And so, as I said, there's the ways in which the young adult males are essentially thrust out of the picture and forced to be sort of conscription into the French military, which again breaks up the social fabric in a certain way of the community. And then also we see how the women and children are rounded up in this really terrible way, which is also, again, showcasing the social fabric, the way in which it's very sensitive and could essentially break at any moment, and that's due to the real increasing pressures from the outside. And so that could be, again, a stand-in for sort of increasing pressures from a kind of external force of colonialization, how it affects the very heart and soul of the communities, such as the Diola and others. So I think that has a kind of broad scope application in terms of a thematic condition or discussion. And then also a type of, and I mentioned before, sort of social consciousness, and also there is a sense of a kind of class consciousness as well, in terms of ruling classes and also the subject classes and kind of currency of influence, that being sort of the stock of food, and what will be the price to be paid if that stock of food is not bartered or exchanged even under force. And so there's a kind of currents of of imposed capitalism, and there's also this idea of a sort of currency of a social class strata in a given circumstance. I think it also finds a sort of pronouncement in voice in other films, mind you, but it's certainly there in a kind of cloaked in this story, EMITAI, and also to the sort of the social and historical implications of the ways in which the soldiers were then sort of forcibly conscripted into the French military forces. And there's actually some really interesting discussion in one of the supplements that will be found actually on this disc of EMITAII. We'll talk about the supplement in a later video, but there are some real social and historical kind of concerns about sort of the perspective of the French and also the perspective of the Diola, and how it's actually quite a very different perspective indeed. So in terms of the subjugated and the oppressed and the oppressors. So but in any event, this is my way to say that this is an incredibly rich film, and very stark, and oftentimes there's a sense of what will happen next. There's a kind of sense of suspense. There's also the sense of the absurd. How can this happen kind of feeling, and things almost spiraling out of control. There's also the ways in which we see the planning and the thinking of the community. How will the community resist? In what forms they will resist, in what ways in which they will find inspiration for this resistance or revolution. And so this has an incredible biting social currency, political consciousness, as well as a real thought-provoking cinematic voice and expression. That is, I think, one of the great expressions of the Ousmane Sembène cinematic voice. This is a really incredible and very, very powerful work indeed. So this is the film, which is EMITAII. So the Criterion Collection has released this set, 3 revolutionary films by Ousmane Sembène, and one of the films, the first film, again, is this film, EMITAII from 1971. This is a film that can be found on the Blu-ray, and indeed there's actually also a supplement that is included on this Blu-ray of EMITAII. But as I mentioned before, let us save our discussion of that supplement, and indeed the other supplement. We'll save the discussion on the supplements for a future video. But let me just say for now that in terms of the presentation of EMITAII, let me rely on the great stapled multi-page robust booklet, because it says on one of the latter pages here about the presentations or about the masters, and I quote, EMITAII and Khala are presented in the aspect ratio of 1.66 to 1, 1.66 to 1, excuse me, and Chedo is presented in the aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. These new 4K digital masters were created from the 35mm original camera negatives with scanning done at Éclair Classique in Paris. Paris. The original monaural soundtracks were remastered from the 35mm original soundtrack negatives. And so we have this this restoration, 4K restoration treatment, both in terms of visuals and audio. We have this treatment being the basis of this Criterion release, and you know, my experience with this film is admittedly very, very limited, and so I don't have a very strong frame of reference for this or any other of the films, in fact, in this 3-volume set or this 3-disc set. But I was very absorbed by this film as I watched it on the Criterion disc, and I've watched it a number of times now. And I've been it has a certain sense of vividness and freshness about it. There's a way in which there are a lot of outdoor scenes. In fact, it's almost primarily outdoors, and a lot of times in sort of sunlight. And sometimes there are these ways in which filters are used, color filters are used intermittently. But also there's a kind of directness of the framing, which I think is well preserved, and it really showcases or maybe enhances a kind of directness. So that's one of the things that I really want to emphasize, at least for me. A film like EMITAï, and indeed other films by Ousmane Sembène, there is a kind of directness, a through line that just allows the viewer to go right in. And I think that's expressed in sort of the balance of the framing and a kind of no-nonsense approach on the one hand, but it also shows a lot of the information that's necessary. So I feel like that feeling is well preserved when I watch EMITAï in terms of this presentation, in terms of the look and the sound of the film. And indeed, I should mention too, the sound is really important. The soundtrack is so vivid because a lot happens on screen, but also a lot happens off screen, and we're left to imagine a lot of the action and the violence that is suggested by a lot of the sounds that are used. So therefore, the soundtrack is very important, and it's incredibly vivid. So I enjoyed watching this film and listening to this film very much upon watching the Criterion disc here of the work EMITAï. But let me just say that again, we will have a separate discussion on the supplement that's found on the disc of EMITAï, and indeed the other supplements found in this set. And we'll also talk about other contours of the set in terms of the art of this great artwork for the set, as well as mentionings of EMITAï in the booklet. Let me just say before I conclude, there is a comprehensive essay on Ousmane Sembène and the 3 films. So there's one comprehensive essay. It does have certain aspects of EMITAï specific commentary in the essay, but it is comprehensive. So I'll speak about the essay in a separate video. But let me just say that there are pages, the first couple pages, pages 2 and 3 do have EMITAï specific information there. So we have the cast and crew details as well as the artwork, and again, the artwork is very significant in terms of the Diola deity and EMITAï and kind of very famous integral scene that's part of the film proceedings. So it's great to have this artwork and the EMITAï specific pages here. But again, we'll speak more about the essay and supplements and other contours of the set in a separate video. But for now, my dear friends, that is a discussion on the work EMITAï. It is a very powerful film, really, really powerful film. And it's in many ways, I think, a great way to introduce us to this very volatile, very confrontational, very dangerous, very unsettling, and also cinematically profound world of the 3 revolutionary films by Ousmane Sembène. So this is the work which is EMITAï. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. So join me again, please, if you're interested. Our next video in this discussion series will be a discussion on the film which is Hala. So it's the next film in this 3-film set. So if you're interested, I'd love to see you at the next video discussion. Again, if you're interested. But whatever the case may be, my dear friends, I very much hope that you continue to be happy and healthy and well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great movies, including EMITAï, including other films in this set, 3 revolutionary films by Ousmane Sembène, such as Hala and Chedo, other films by Ousmane Sembène, other films in the Criterion Collection, and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers. And hopefully I'll see you at the video discussion where we will talk about the film Hala.